When Eliza was just 8, she vanished in the forest for a full night. Search teams feared the worst. But she was found safe, wrapped in a blanket of moss, warm, and whispering about a giant bear that had watched over her, gently keeping her safe until dawn. Everyone said it was just her mind protecting her, a child's fantasy born from fear. But Eliza never forgot the softness in those deep, wild eyes. Years later, a grown woman now studying wildlife, she returns to those same woods, and the dreams come back. Dreams, and signs. Paw prints. Moved food. A lingering presence. And then, one night under a moonlit sky, the impossible happens. The bear returns. But this time, it's not just a childhood memory, it's real. And what he came back for will change everything Eliza thought she knew about wild love, memory, and fate. The small mountain town of Cedar Hollow was no stranger to wild tales, but the one they still whispered about, softly, reverently, was the night Eliza Holt vanished. She was just 8 years old, chasing a runaway kite near the edge of the forest. One minute she was laughing, her red scarf flapping behind her like a flag, and the next, she was gone. Her mother, Ruth, screamed her name into the trees until her voice cracked. Dozens of townsfolk joined the search. Flashlights swept through dense pine, rescue dogs barked into darkness, and the cold wind bit harder with every hour lost. The woods were no place for a child after dark, not with the cliffs, the rivers, and the bears. And yet, the next morning, just after dawn, she was found curled up by a tree. Calm. Unharmed. Asleep. Wrapped in soft moss. Her scarf folded neatly at her feet. When asked what happened, Eliza simply said, "The big bear kept me warm." Everyone chalked it up to trauma. A coping mechanism. A child's mind shielding her from the truth. But Eliza knew what she saw. He was real. Enormous, brown, with eyes that didn't match the wilderness. They were kind, almost familiar. The bear hadn't spoken, not with words, but she'd felt something. Safe. Loved. Not threatened. Protected. Over the years, the story became a town legend. The bear dream, they called it. A fairy tale. Something Eliza grew out of, or pretended to. She stopped talking about it, learned to smile when people brought it up, even studied biology at university as if to disprove the very thing she held onto as a child. But in her quietest moments, late at night, journal in hand, she would draw those eyes again and again. Because a part of her had never truly come back from that night. 15 years had passed since the night Eliza vanished and returned, and yet the memory never quite left her. Now 23, she had returned to Cedar Hollow not as a frightened girl, but as a wildlife conservationist with a degree and a hardened heart. Her mother had passed the year before, and Eliza came back not just to settle the house, but to confront the silence that still lived between the pine trees. She joined the local wildlife research team, tracking bear migration patterns for a forest protection initiative. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd once told the world she'd been saved by a bear. Now, she was studying them to prove they were just animals. But on her second day in the field, something strange happened. A claw mark, too large for any local bear, appeared on the side of a tree just yards from where she had been stationed. No signs of aggression, just a vertical mark. Almost like a symbol. Her team laughed it off. Could be an old black bear. Or weather damage, someone said. But Eliza stared at it for a long time. That night, she had a dream. She stood at the edge of the forest, the sky tinged lavender with fading twilight. Wind rustled through the pines. And then, footsteps. Heavy. Rhythmic. From the shadows emerged the same bear from her childhood. This time, he was older. Scarred. But his eyes, still the same. She woke in a cold sweat, heart pounding. Just a dream, she told herself. Just a dream. But when she arrived at the field site the next day, something stopped her cold. Near the claw-marked tree, resting neatly atop a mossy rock, was a red scarf. Folded. Just like before. She hadn't brought it. No one on the team had. And that's when the wind seemed to whisper through the pines. Like a name she hadn't heard in years. Eliza. Eliza stood frozen. The red scarf lay still, untouched by wind or paw. It wasn't just a fabric, it was her scarf. The one she wore the night she vanished. The one she never saw again after waking in her bed all those years ago. Her breath caught. She looked around, no tracks, no signs of disturbance. Just silence. A thick, knowing silence. That night, she sat alone in her childhood bedroom, holding the scarf. It smelled faintly of pine and something wild, not threatening but ancient. Protective. She thought about telling the research team, but what would she even say? That a bear had returned her childhood scarf? That her dreams were starting to merge with reality? Instead, she ventured deeper into the woods the next day, alone. Not to track data, but to follow instinct. As she walked, she noticed strange signs, not just claw marks but gentle rearrangements in nature. Sticks placed like arrows. A tree stump with fruit resting atop it. Footprints, not bear tracks exactly, but bigger than any known species. And then she heard it, deep in the distance, a haunting melodic sound. Not quite a growl, not quite a hum. Almost like singing. She followed the sound through a clearing, past a ridge, and into a secluded grove she'd never seen before. There, among the tall ferns and filtered sunlight, stood a massive bear. He didn't run. He didn't growl. He bowed his head. Eliza's breath caught. The bear's fur was grayer than she remembered, but his eyes, they hadn't changed. A deep, knowing amber. Slowly, Eliza knelt. Her heart thundered in her chest. The bear stepped forward, ever so slowly, and dropped something in front of her. A small, smooth stone. Etched with a symbol. She didn't understand it, but somehow, she knew what it meant. Welcome back. The bear turned and disappeared into the forest, but not in fear. In rhythm, as if inviting her to follow. And as she stood there, heart racing, something inside her whispered. This wasn't a dream then. And it's not a dream now. Eliza didn't return to the cabin that night. She couldn't. Her legs moved on their own, driven by something deeper than logic, a primal recognition that the bear was not leading her into danger, but into truth. The trees grew denser, the light dimmer. Twilight blurred the edges of reality. Each step echoed with memories she hadn't known were hers, like pieces of a forgotten melody returning note by note. She remembered being here. Not last week. Not last year. But years ago, when she was a child, lost during a family camping trip. She remembered crying, the forest closing in. And she remembered him. The bear. Only back then, he was younger, massive, but somehow gentle. He had found her curled beneath a pine tree and, unbelievably, had led her to safety. She had followed him for miles, believing it was just a dream when she woke up in her bed the next day, with no one able to explain how she had survived the cold night. But it wasn't a dream. The scarf. The stone. The grove. It was all real. Eliza's pace quickened. Her boots splashed through a shallow stream. The air turned colder, but not harsh. The path curved upward, leading to a cliffside she had never documented in her research, yet somehow knew exactly how to reach. At the top stood an ancient-looking tree, twisted and wise, its roots grown over a hollowed-out space. And there he was again. The bear. This time, he didn't drop anything. He simply waited. Eliza approached slowly. The bear lowered himself to the earth, letting out a long, mournful sound that wasn't quite a growl, more like a whisper lost to time. She knelt beside him and placed the scarf on the ground. Then something strange happened. The symbols on the stone began to faintly glow. Soft light poured from beneath the tree roots. And from within the hollow, she saw them, drawings etched into the wood and bark. Primitive, but unmistakable. A small girl. A bear. A journey. A reunion. Tears spilled down Eliza's cheeks. Her whole life, she had doubted the dream. She had buried the experience in logic, education, and routine. But the forest had not forgotten. The bear had not forgotten. And now, neither would she. Eliza sat in stillness beside the bear, her breath sinking with the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest. The wind moved through the ancient trees like a low hum, as if the forest itself was exhaling, watching, remembering. As the glowing runes on the stone began to dim, something strange happened. The bear nudged the hollow with his nose. From within the roots, something slipped free, a necklace. Wooden, delicate, strung together with animal sinew. And hanging from it was a carved pendant, a crescent moon just like the one she used to draw on everything as a little girl. It had been hers. She took it in trembling hands. Eliza whispered, "How did you keep this?" The bear responded not with sound, but with stillness, with presence, with a kind of deep communication that transcended words. The kind humans had forgotten, but the wild still carried. She understood. This was more than a reunion. It was a passing of memory, a spiritual inheritance. The bear had not simply remembered her, he had waited for her. Watched over her all this time, guarding this sacred place, holding on to the pieces of her story until she was ready to return. Tears streamed down Eliza's face again. The pendant warmed in her palm as though her childhood self had left part of her soul in this forest, and now it was home again. The bear slowly rose to his feet. There was a calmness in his movement now, a completion. Eliza knew. He had brought her back, not to claim her, but to free her, from doubt, from fear, from the lie that wonder doesn't exist in this world anymore. She stood too. A silent goodbye passed between them. He turned toward the deeper woods, pausing only once to look back, his dark eyes catching the last light of the moon. Then he disappeared into the trees. Eliza remained rooted to the spot, her fingers around the pendant, the stone at her feet, and a sense of peace she had never known. The wild had whispered. And she had listened. Eliza returned to the cabin with the dawn at her heels. The silence inside felt different now, not hollow but sacred. She touched the pendant resting over her heart and gently set her bag down on the old wooden table. For a long moment, she simply stood there, letting it all settle. Had it really happened? Her eyes drifted toward the dusty journal she hadn't opened in years. Slowly, she flipped it open, and on the first page she wrote, "He remembered me. Not as I am now, but as the girl who believed bears could talk, and forests could heal." Every page after that began to fill with pieces of the journey. The stone, the pendant, the soundless conversation between species, the night that bridged fantasy and memory. She didn't return to the city. Instead, Eliza restored the cabin, kept the garden growing, and began writing stories for the children in town. She never once mentioned the bear to anyone, not fully. But the stories she told carried the soul of it. Every tale hinted at a forest guardian, a quiet protector, a truth behind dreams. Sometimes, late at night, children would hear her laugh from the porch, whispering to the woods. Or they'd find her sitting with a cup of tea, gazing toward the treeline like she was waiting for someone. Years passed. And one morning, as the forest bloomed with wildflowers, a child wandered too far from a nearby campsite. Lost and frightened, she followed the river until she found an old woman with silver hair and warm eyes. Eliza welcomed her with calm arms and a gentle smile. When the child asked if she believed in forest spirits, Eliza placed her hand over her pendant and whispered, "I once knew one. He found me when I needed him most." The child asked, "Was he real?" Eliza's smile deepened. "As real as you. As real as the wind." And somewhere, just beyond the bend in the woods, unseen but felt, a massive shadow moved quietly through the trees. Watching. Remembering. Still protecting. Some connections are too deep to fade, even between a human and a bear. This wasn't just a dream. It was a memory, a promise, and a return. If you've ever felt the wild calling to you, or believed that love can cross even the silence of species, this story was for you. Evergreen tree paw prints. Red heart, like if you believe animals remember. Bell subscribe to @BearSoul Stories for more stories that touch the heart. Speech balloon comment. Have you ever felt like an animal remembered you?